Best horror games of 2024. Ladies and gentlemen, hello! It's time for a new collection of horror games. Today we're going to see what's going to scare us starting from 2024. So, get comfy, pour yourself a cup of tea, and let's embark on a journey in search of fear, terror, and jump scares. Alone in the Dark. 2024 will kick off with Alone in the Dark, a reboot of the third-person action horror series. The game is set in the 1920s. You'll play as one of two characters, Edward Carnby or Emily Hartwood, and venture into the Decito Manor, an asylum for the mentally ill, where strange things are happening. Emily hires Detective Edward to find her missing uncle. You'll explore a mysterious mansion, solve complex puzzles, dodge deadly traps, and battle monsters, all while uncovering the secrets of the Gothic estate. This time, the main characters are portrayed by real actors Judy Comer and David Harbour. Playing as either character will reveal two distinct stories. The game promises an atmospheric world, an intriguing plot, and a mesmerizing doom jazz soundtrack. Unfollow. Next, we have Unfollow, scheduled for release in the first quarter of 2024. It's a first-person adventure horror game centered around the dark side of social media. You play as a girl named Anna who wakes up in an empty house with no memory of how she got there. The only familiar face is Aki Direst, a vlogger whose videos helped Anna through her darkest moments. But there's no time to binge. Watch YouTube. You need to escape the house by exploring rooms, finding items, and solving puzzles. However, it's not so simple as a terrifying creature is watching your every move. The game offers two modes, single player and broadcast mode, for those who wish to share their gameplay live. Luto. Up next is Luto, a first-person psychological horror. The main character suffers from depression, like many of us, right? And is trapped in his own home. Your task is to escape by delving into memories, overcoming various challenges, and battling the depression associated with the loss of a loved one. The game tries to scare you in different ways, with an oppressive atmosphere, paranormal phenomena, and various phobias like monophobia, claustrophobia, agoraphobia, and nyctophobia. Silence Channel 2. Then there's something similar called Silence Channel 2. It's a first-person psychological horror based on real stories. You play as an unknown girl who wakes up, sees a slightly open door, and realizes someone has broken into her house. Two thoughts come to mind. Call the police and try to escape. But it's more complicated than that, as you find yourself in a supernatural trap and must explore the house, solve puzzles, hide, and occasionally fight strange creatures. The game promises two stories, one about the girl trying to escape her house, and the other about the officer coming to her aid. Reveil. Another horror game promised for this year, though I suspect it won't be out until at least 2024, is Reveil. It's a first-person psychological horror focused on story-driven gameplay. Set in the 1960s, you play as Walter Thompson, a circus stage mechanic who wakes up with a headache, clueless about the previous night. His wife and daughter are missing. Now he must gather his thoughts and find his family. You'll explore 5 meticulously designed locations, solve numerous puzzles and riddles, piece together your memories, and do everything possible to keep from going insane. AILA. Something interesting is also coming in 2025, namely a new Brazilian first-person horror game called AILA. Set in 2035, you play a beta tester fortunate or unfortunate enough to test a new AI named AILA, designed to create horror games. But as we know, AI evolves. It starts to infiltrate the real world, taking control of the house and bringing every fear to life. Your task is to fight back against the out-of-control program. However, every decision you make only provokes the AI to more ferocious actions. Can you stop it before disaster strikes? The plot sounds intriguing, and the game is being developed on the Unreal Engine 5, looking very impressive. Details are still scarce, but we know it will feature many puzzles, plenty of gore, and numerous choices, making each playthrough unique. Still Wakes the Deep. Continuing our journey, this time we're heading to an oil rig in the psychological horror game called Still Wakes the Deep. Set in the waters of Scotland, you play as a worker on an oil platform on the brink of collapse due to a brutal storm. Your goal is to save yourself and your team, but with communication lines to the outside world severed, your only option is to reach the lifeboats. However, it's not that simple. Not only is the platform falling apart and corridors flooding, but a supernatural monster is also hunting you. With no weapons or special abilities at your disposal, survival just got a bit tougher. But with cleverness and quick thinking, you still stand a chance. Beneath. Moving on to games where you're not completely helpless, specifically horror shooters. First up is Beneath. The game unfolds in underwater research stations in the middle of the ocean where supernatural shenanigans are afoot. You play as a deep-sea diver named Noah Quinn, tasked with finding a way out of this underwater world. Equipped with a diving suit, you can explore not just the underwater stations, but also the ocean floor. You also have various weapons at your disposal, with modification options. But be warned, ammunition is scarce, so you'll need to act wisely. You'll fight not just monsters, but also your own mind, as such a barrage of horrors puts your mental health in jeopardy. The game promises an adaptive AI and destructible environment. Pine Harbor. Next, we move from water to land with Pine Harbor, a first-person horror shooter set in the small fishing town of Pine Harbor, which, after a technological disaster, became a haven for terrifying monsters. Your task is to uncover the town's secrets and help the remaining locals survive. This involves exploring the environment, fighting through hordes of nasty monsters, gathering resources, and crafting equipment. Developed on Unreal Engine 5, the game promises a tense atmosphere reminiscent of Silent Hill. Silent Hill 2 Remake. Speaking of Silent Hill, one of the most anticipated horrors is the remake of Silent Hill 2. Announced last year, there hasn't been much new information, so here's a quick recap of what's known. The main storyline remains unchanged. You still play as James Sunderland, who receives a letter from his deceased wife asking him to visit her in Silent Hill. As for gameplay, it's likely to be completely revamped, from the camera view to combat mechanic. The game involves exploring two parallel worlds, fleeing or fighting horrifying monsters, interacting with other survivors, solving puzzles, and unraveling the town's mysteries. Developed on Unreal Engine 5, it also promises 3D sound, ensuring high-quality remake standards. Post-trauma. There's also something similar called Post-Trauma, a third-person psychological action horror set to release in spring 2024. You play as a conductor named Roman, who's unfortunate enough to find himself in a terrifying world with a distorted reality. Your goal is to escape this nightmare and return to your family. To do this, you'll need to explore locations, solve complex puzzles, find necessary items, and either fight or flee from ghastly creatures. Inspired by old-school classics like Resident Evil and Silent Hill, expect fixed camera angles with modern graphics, a creepy yet atmospheric world, smooth controls, and excellent sound. Tormented Souls 2. Speaking of classic horrors, Tormented Souls 2 was announced this summer. It's a sequel to the survival action horror with third-person view elements. The second part is a direct continuation of the original Tormented Soul. You once again play as Caroline Walker. Her sister Anna suffers from an incurable disease that's turning her into a living corpse. To save her, you head to the mysterious town of Puerto Milla, rumored to have a cure. However, the town is filled with gruesome monsters and bloodthirsty cultists, so it won't be a pleasant journey. You'll explore ominous monastery corridors and other locations, fight enemies using makeshift weapons and any light sources, gather resources, craft necessary items, solve puzzles, and decipher intricate riddles. The exact release date is unknown, but it's promised for 2024. The Bornless. Let's spice things up with cooperative games, starting with the Bornless. It's a first-person horror shooter set in the 1950s, in a world of horror and dark magic. The game features several modes, with the primary one being a battle royale where 8 players split into teams of 2 and fight for survival. The map also includes a bloodthirsty demon named Arabas to defeat, as well as scattered incenses, a resource to summon your own demons to hinder your enemy's progress. You'll have a wide arsenal of weapons, black magic skills and abilities, and various tools like smoke grenades. There's also a single-player mode with a small story, cinematic cutscenes with real actors, and a chance to familiarize yourself with the locations. Killer Klowns from Outer Space. The game, Next cooperative horror set for a 2024 release is Killer Klowns from Outer Space the game. Based on the cult 80s movie Killer Klowns from Outer Space, it's an asymmetrical online game where players are divided into two teams. The first team, Killer Klowns, consists of 3 players with unearthly abilities, comical yet deadly weapons, and funny traps. Their main goal is to kill as many people as possible and complete the invasion of Earth. The second team, the Locals of Crescent Crow, comprises 7 players tasked with thwarting the invasion and surviving. They must explore locations for valuable resources and weapons while avoiding capture. The game promises random map generation, numerous tactical opportunities for both sides, a unique hide and seek gameplay style, and character customization. By Sweet Carole. For those looking for something unusual, there's a game called By Sweet Carole, a 2D adventure horror in the style of Disney cartoons set in the early 1900s. You play as Lana Benton, trying to uncover the truth about the mysterious disappearance of a girl named Carole Simmons. The search leads Lana to Ban Hall Orphanage, where a girl of the same age recently escaped. However, the building is overrun with wild rabbits and other malevolent creatures, so the search won't be easy. In the game, you'll explore locations, solve puzzles, transform into a rabbit to overcome various obstacles, meet colorful characters who help in your investigation, and even play as some of them. The game looks very intriguing, with a release promised for 2024. Little Nightmares 3. But when it comes to horror platformers, the most anticipated next year is certainly Little Nightmares 3, a new installment in the Little Nightmares universe. It's a platformer with quest and horror elements. Developed by Supermassive Games, creators of games like Dark Pictures, Quarry, and Until Dawn, you play as one of 2 characters, Lo or Alone, trying to escape from nowhere, inhabited by terrible creatures feeding on children's fear. The game world consists of diverse locations, each with its own atmosphere, story, and enemies. For example, in Necropolis, you'll be hunted by the Boss Baby, a huge, creepy infant. Throughout the game, you'll navigate traps, collect items, solve puzzles requiring the combined abilities of both characters, and each will have their own tools, Lo with a bow and arrows, and Alone with a wrench. A key feature of the 3rd installment is the online cooperative mode, allowing you to play with a friend. The Dark Pictures, Directive 8020. Since I mentioned Supermassive Games, we're also expecting the 2nd season of the Dark Pictures next year. The next interactive horror installment, Directive 8020, unfolds in space, telling the story of the Cassiopeia spacecraft crew searching for a new home for humanity. After arriving at the exoplanet Tau Ceti F, something inexplicable happens, and the crew members start going mad and trying to kill each other. That's all we know about the game so far, so we're waiting for more details. Paranormal Tales. Moving on to paranormal stuff. As usual, there's never too much of it. First up is Paranormal Tales, a horror game with a realistic feel where you see the world through a chest-mounted video recorder, handheld camera, or phone. It's a collection of scary video recordings with paranormal phenomena belonging to people who have disappeared. You'll step into the shoes of the victims to understand what happened to them. The game will scare you with a tense atmosphere and, of course, jump scares. Haunted Memories: The Return. There's also something similar called Haunted Memories: The Return, a first-person psychological horror where you play yourself. The game is set in Green Park, where you'll experience isolation and loneliness. However, the oppressive atmosphere of the game will make you feel like you're constantly being watched. Your goal is to find a way out and unravel all the mysteries of this place. You'll need to explore over 10 unique locations, look for clues like audio files, videos, photos, and use an ultraviolet flashlight to find invisible items. Paranormal Records. And here's a bit more from the realm of the paranormal, from a solo developer in a game titled Paranormal Records. This is a story-driven psychological horror where you take on the role of a TV show host investigating paranormal phenomena. For the filming of the next episode, you venture into a psychiatric hospital to unravel the mystery of the disappearance of its patients. The game places a strong emphasis on realism, affecting not just the visual and audio aspects, but also the gameplay. Furthermore, the developer promises to break away from traditional cliches and not just rely on cheap jump scares, but instead create an oppressive atmosphere of solitude. Will the developer manage to bring all these ideas to fruition? Well, these are the kind of horror games we can look forward to in the near future. There are other games that didn't make it into this roundup, like Routine, Ill, Carnival Hunt, and others, which I talked about in the last part, for those interested. Of course, more games will likely be announced throughout 2024, and I'll tell you about those in upcoming videos. So don't forget to subscribe to the channel, like this video, and let me know in the comments which horror games you're most looking forward to. Perhaps I'll cover them in the next roundup. And that's all from me for now. Until we meet again, goodbye.